Come on.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Happy Black History Month. And myself, the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion with Child and Family Services, along with my amazing Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, we are so excited that you have joined us today for the kickoff of our Black History Month speaker series. We are focused on Black history, past, present, future with Buffalo influencers. And it is such an honor today for us to have none other than Miss Eva Doyle here with us today. We are really honored to have her. She has made such a huge mark in the Buffalo community. And I'm going to share a little bit about her in just a minute. But we wanted to do something a little special today. We are kicking off each of our series with intro music, so we're not just all sitting in silence. So today you have the pleasure of hearing none other than Buffalo's own Mr. Will Holton. He's actually in the Musicians Hall of Fame right here in Buffalo. You can find out more about him at the Black Musicians Club, and that was on his album. And so we have that there for you. That was Rock My World. So we're going to get started. Before we do, I want to tell you a little bit about Miss Doyle. So Eva M. Doyle is a retired Buffalo public school teacher. She received a bachelor's and master's degree in elementary education from Buffalo State College. She's presently a PhD candidate at Capella University. She's writing her dissertation on the topic of educational leadership in urban schools. Mrs. Doyle taught in the Buffalo public schools for 30 years. After retirement, she served as a consultant to the African American program of Buffalo schools. She also taught courses at Buffalo State College on how to teach in diverse classrooms. While in the Buffalo public schools, she founded the African American Curriculum Resource Center at the Campus West School. The Resource Center provided materials and information on the contributions of African Americans for students, teachers, and the general community. The center was active from 1994 to 2004. It was the first such curriculum resource center in the history of the Buffalo public schools. While teaching in the school system, Mrs. Doyle was known for her teaching African American history all year long and being successful with at-risk students, especially teaching Black males. Mrs. Doyle has received numerous awards for her work in writing and teaching African American history. Mrs. Doyle is the recipient of the Evans Young Award, which is the highest award given by the Buffalo Urban League. This award is named for two outstanding leaders in civil rights. Although retired, Mrs. Doyle continues to teach and considers the entire Western New York area her classroom. She lectures and writes extensively on topics in African American history in both the city and suburban communities. Mrs. Doyle is a columnist for the oldest Black newspaper in Western New York, The Criterion. Her column, Eye on History, began in the Challenger in February 1979. It will be 42 years in February 2021. Her column has been published in newspapers around the country. It has appeared in the Buffalo News every February in the Sunday edition for Black History Month for the past several years. Mrs. Doyle is the author of 12 books. She's received numerous awards for her work. In 2010, Mrs. Doyle was a candidate for Lieutenant Governor of New York State for the Freedom Party. She was honored twice by the Black Achievers in Industry Award. She received the Legend Award from the Black Achievers in Industry. In 2016, New York State Senator Timothy Kennedy selected Mrs. Doyle as the New York State Distinguished Woman of the Year. She was also honored in Albany by Assemblywoman Crystal D. Peoples-Stokes with a proclamation for her commitment to equality. Mrs. Doyle was selected twice as the Citizen of the Month in Erie County by legislators Betty Jean Grant and Barbara Miller Williams. She was honored by Bishop Darius G. Pridgeon at the True Bethel Baptist Church in February 2017. She was featured on the Legends of Western New York banners in Martin Luther King Park along Fillmore Avenue in Buffalo. Mrs. Doyle has been the host of her own radio show called Eye on History for the past 14 years on WUFO 1080 AM and 96 FM. She has created more than 100 essay contests for our youth and adults to encourage them to enhance their writing skills. Her Roses for Outstanding Women Awards program has honored over 500 women during the past 11 years. Recently, the auditorium at the Frank E. Merriweather Library was renamed Dr. Eva M. Doyle Auditorium. It was initiated by New York State Senator Tim Kennedy, Buffalo Mayor Byron W. Brown, and Mary Jean Chakowski, director of the public library system. Mrs. Doyle also created a scholarship for students of color in honor of her late husband called the Romeo Doyle Muhammad Scholarship. He was a veteran of the Korean War who served our country with honor and distinction. The 11th anniversary of the scholarship was observed in July 2020. And so there are a host of other awards and accolades and recognition for Miss Doyle. And so all of that, I didn't even read the whole thing. You all, I just wanted you to get a little taste of the gifts that we have before us today. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce all of you and reintroduce to some Miss Eva, soon to be Dr. Eva M. Doyle. Miss Doyle?
Yes, I didn't think you were going to read that much. But thank you so much, Chantel, for inviting me to speak to your audience today. There are a couple, I just want to say this quickly. There are a couple things that people call me in the community. They call me Dr. Doyle, which the library's auditorium is named after me, Dr. Eva M. Doyle. And they call me Mother Doyle. So you're welcome to call me that because everybody, just about everybody, calls me Mother Doyle. And the reason for that, it's an honor because it's in the African tradition of being called mother. So if you call me Mother Doyle, that is fine. Now, can you hear me, Chantel?
Yes,
Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Yep, I can hear
all
you.
right. Okay, I wanted to make sure. Let's make now because I have limited time. I'm going to stick to my notes because if I don't stick to my notes, I will be talking about everything because when it comes to African American history, that is my life's work. So I'm going to really have to do that. The second thing is if I cough a little bit, it's not COVID. I always tell people that I'm taking some medication for high blood pressure. And one of the side effects is a little cough every now and then. So hopefully I've got my water here and I've got my cough drops. So hopefully that won't happen. But I just wanted to let you know. First of all, let me again thank Chantel Thompson for inviting me to speak to you today. Several years ago, I did a lecture for your organization before in person. And of course, because of COVID, I'm doing everything by Zoom now, and I had to get kind of used to that because I'm a senior citizen, and I had to get my grandchildren to show me how to use all of this technology. So they've done a good job. I have made my life's work teaching, researching, and lecturing and sharing African American history all over Western New York, in both the city and the suburbs. I have spoken in Cheektowaga, Tonawanda, Orchard Park, West Seneca, Clarence, New York. I get a lot of invitations from various groups and organizations to speak. As a teacher for over 30 years, and as Chantel mentioned, I was known for two things. I was known for teaching African American history all year long from September to June and being very successful with at-risk students, African American males especially, but with any student who is having a problem, usually the principal assigned that student to me. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share something with you that was quite amazing that happened this past summer. A former second grade student of mine who is now very successful in Washington, D.C., contacted me to interview me. He is now 44 years old and lives in Washington. His family, his mother is still here in Buffalo, so he comes back from time to time to spend holidays with them. When he contacted me, he said he never forgot the science lesson that I taught him in the second grade at the Campus West School, which I spent 25 years of my career teaching at the Campus West School, which was an elementary school on the campus of Buffalo State College. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked that this 44-year-old man remembered me from the second grade. So he interviewed me in front of the Freedom Wall. Some of you might be familiar with the Freedom Wall. It's located on the corner of East Ferry and Michigan Avenue. It's a mural, and that was painted by 4 very outstanding artists in the city of Buffalo. It was sponsored by the Albright Knox Art Gallery. And if you haven't had a chance to see it, I certainly suggest that you do. 28, it features 28 civil rights leaders. And I am very honored to have been selected as one of those people to be featured on the Freedom Wall out of 300 people. And I really thank and appreciate the Albright Knox Art Gallery for including me. And it's such an honor to be on that wall with Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Fannie Lou Hamer, the Honorable Shirley Chisholm, and all of the great leaders, both nationally, some of them locally, some of them have recently passed, but to be there was such a great honor. So he wanted to meet me there, and he did the interview. Now you can see the interview. It's on YouTube, you can pull it up. It's under big discussions. And so you might want to take a look at that. Now, as a teacher, you never know, and I always tell teachers this when I do in-service training, you never know what impact you may have on a student. Now, I'm just going to give you a brief interview on how my presentation is going to go today. I'm getting all these pop-ups on my screen. I got to do something about that. I'm going to give you a brief overview. As my pastor, Reverend Jonathan R. Staples of the First Shiloh Baptist Church always says, I have more message than I have minutes. And I'm going to be giving you a lot of information today. I'm going to take you on a journey. And I'm hoping that I can get through all of this, because what I'm doing today, I'm actually doing a 3-hour lecture in about 50 minutes. So I'll do the best I can. Let me start by saying that Black History Month was started by Dr. Carter G. Woodson in 1926. He did not begin it as a month. He called it Negro History Week, because in those days, Black people were referred to as being a Negro or being a colored person. And Dr. Woodson was born in New Canton, Virginia, working in the coal mines to help support his family. His family was, he was born in 1875. His parents were former slaves. They were very, very, very poor. He was not able to attend high school until he was 20 years old. He later had an opportunity after all those years to go to college. He earned a master's degree, and he was only the second African American to graduate from Harvard University. The first one to graduate was Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. In 1915, Dr. Woodson started the Association for the Study of Negro History. That's what it was called at that time, the study of Negro life and history. And it always disturbed him that the history of African Americans was not observed or taught in the schools. This led him to start Negro History Week. Now, there was a reason he chose February. He chose February for 2 reasons. Number one, it was the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, which was observed on February 12th, and he really admired Abraham Lincoln. The second reason he chose February was it celebrated the birthday of the great orator and leader for freedom, Frederick Douglass, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Now, I have to say something here because we're not really certain that Frederick Douglass was born on February the 14th. Because you know he was born a slave. But as a slave, as a young child growing up, he remembered his mother calling him my little Valentine. So he chose February 14th as his birthday. Now, I'm glad we have, and let me say this. We started out, when we go back here, it started out as Negro History Week. It took 50 years for it to become African American History Month. And the person who coined the phrase African American History Month was the civil rights leader and former candidate for president twice of the United States, the Reverend Jesse Jackson. And a lot of people may not know that or may not remember it. I'm glad we have it, but I have always emphasized that African American history should be celebrated 365 days a year. And that's why I continue to do this work. My newspaper column, Eye on History, is dedicated to this. And this is a very, very special month for me because this month marks the 42nd anniversary of my column, Eye on History. For 42 years, without interruption, it has been published in the city of Buffalo. And I want to thank the Criterion. I write my column appears in the Criterion, the oldest Black newspaper in Western New York, published by the distinguished Merriweather family. When I started to write the column, I started it in the Challenger, which is published by Sister Alnisa Banks. So for 42 years, I continue to write it. And I want to thank the Buffalo News because every February, every Sunday in the month of February, you can read my column, Eye on History, in the Buffalo News. In the H section, it's always in the H section. You will see my picture there. And so you can read it beginning this coming Sunday will be the first article in the H section. Now I'm going to tell you the title of this first article. This is the title. The African Slave Who Helped Save Colonial Boston in 1721. Now he had a strange name, and I'm going to try to pronounce it. I know how to spell it, but I might mess up the pronunciation. He was called Onesimus. Onesimus. Now this is how you spell it. Onesimus. He was owned by the Puritan minister Cotton Mather. And the congregation of Cotton Mather gave this slave to him as a gift. And Cotton Mather gave him this name, Onesimus, because it's in the Bible. There was an African slave in the Bible who was converted to Christianity by Apostle Paul, and that was his name. Now, I don't want to give away the entire article, but I'll give you a hint. Onesimus helped stop the smallpox virus in Boston. And by doing that, he saved hundreds of people because half of the population in colonial Boston was infected with smallpox. So I hope you read it. It's a long article. And like I said, I thank the editors of the news for giving me this opportunity. And this is the 9th year that my column will appear there. But let me just give you very quickly some idea of some of the past articles, and I'm going to go through them very quickly, some of the past articles that have appeared in the news. Now, I'm known not only for just writing African American history, but I'm also known for writing about the little known facts of African American history. And I think that's one reason why the news picked up my column. And these are some titles of past articles that have appeared in the news. And here we go. The Statue of Liberty was originally a symbol of freed slaves. That was published in 2012. The Black Seamstress Memoirs shed light on the Lincoln years. This was an article that talked about the Black woman who lived in the Lincoln White House for 4 years. Her name was Elizabeth Keckley, and she knew all of their secrets. And after Lincoln was assassinated and his wife left the White House, she wrote a book. And one of his relatives tried to stop the publication of the book because she told all of their secrets. So her name, Elizabeth Keckley, she was the seamstress for the wife of Lincoln. I never will forget, I went on a trip. I've traveled along over the United States, and I went with a group of people to Springfield, Illinois. And they have a wonderful museum in honor of Abraham Lincoln. And I was with about 10 or 12 people, and they had a statue of his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln. And in the back of her, she had on a beautiful dress. In the back of her was this Black woman, and she was sort of holding up part of the dress. And so somebody asked me something. They said, "Who is that Black woman standing in back of President Lincoln's wife?" I said, "That's Elizabeth Keckley." Of course, nobody had ever heard of her. So therefore, I just did a presentation right there in the middle of the museum on the history of his wife. Okay, I'm going to go through these very quickly. Here's another title from the Buffalo News, from the Ion History column, published in 2017. Several men of color have served as U.S. presidents. That always surprises people when they find out that. Several presidents that have been president of the United States have African-American ancestry. This one is called Hawkins Brutality Set Precedent for the Next 200 Years. This talks about the slave seller and owner, Hawkins, who was involved in the transportation and selling of slaves. But I pointed out something in this article. I gave the names of some of the slave ships, and I'm going to read the names of those slave ships to you. Brotherhood, John the Baptist, Justice, Integrity, Liberty, Good Intent, Black Boy, Morning Star, Mary, Gift of God, and one of the slave ships was called Jesus. Now, it's documented in a book called There is a River, written by Vincent Harding. And I need to just put a little pin there. I never write anything or discuss anything about African-American history that cannot be documented. I told my students one time, if you write about history, you better be ready to back it up, because somebody, somewhere, is going to ask you this question. How do you know? Where did you get the information? I spend hours and hours and hours of research at the Buffalo History Museum on Elmwood in Nottingham Terrace. I have been there in their library. They have a very extensive library. I spend hours of research in the Grosvenor's room at the Downtown Central Library, and in the rare book room And in order for you to use the rare book room, you have to make an appointment, show identification. And sometimes somebody sits right across from you while you're going through these old, old books. But let me hurry along here. My time is going. Here's another article I wrote, What They Never Told You in History Class, which that's the title of a book, What They Never Told You in History Class. It was written by Kamit Kush, I'll spell his first name, Khamit Kush. Now, the interesting thing about this, I did it in two parts, and I hope I have this here. He talks about the three black popes of the Catholic Church. There have been three black popes of the Catholic Church. And I think I have the names here. Let me see if I do. Yeah, here they are. I better put my glasses on. Pope Victor, who lived from 186 AD to 197 AD. Pope Miltiades lived from 311 AD to 314 AD. And Pope St. Gelasius lived from 492 AD to 496 AD. Their history is absolutely fascinating. I don't have time to go through it here because I have this clock sitting in front of me and I'm looking at the clock, but I just wanted to, that was one of the articles that appeared in the Buffalo News. I just have a couple more. I certainly don't have all of them because there's too many of them. Now this article, is called The Black Hockey Players of Nova Scotia. And I wanted to write about the Black hockey players who played hockey from 1895 to 1925. And here's a book. It's called The Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes, 1895, in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. The book is very, very, very interesting. Get a book called Black Ice. The interesting thing about these hockey players is they create many of the hockey moves that you see the hockey players doing today were actually created by these Black hockey players, but nobody ever talks about them. And I had to do a tremendous amount of research to get this information. Almost through with the next article. This is local here. The first Black baseball player of the Buffalo Bisons was Frank Grant, who made history playing baseball. But he couldn't stay here long because there was a lot of prejudice. And this is going back into, he played in 1887. So there was a lot of prejudice. And even when they took a team photo, he was not allowed to be a part of that team photo. But this is the article. And I had a response from somebody who wrote in the comment section of the news. And the comment was, it's about time that he got credit that he reserved. And the person who wrote that comment was not an African-American. I appreciate that I get comments from people from all over Western New York, not just African-Americans, saying that they appreciate the information because a lot of this, they don't know. They haven't been taught before. And this one here was called The Escape of William and Ellen Craft, who were slaves, but they disguised themselves. She was very fair-skinned. She looked white, and her husband was very dark-skinned. So she pretended to be the person who owned him, and they were able to escape from enslavement. So fugitive slaves used a lot of disguises in order for them to escape. I'm almost finished. Black sailors and the veterans of the War of 1812. I've done a lot of work on that. Buffalo, the Route to Freedom. I've done a lot of work on the Underground Railroad. The history of Blacks in the Revolutionary War. And I just found out a couple of years ago, see, this is the exciting thing about doing this work. I'm constantly learning. I've been doing this for 42 years, but let me tell you, I am constantly learning something new. And I learned that during the Revolutionary War, there were hundreds of Haitian soldiers who came to this country from Haiti and fought in the American Revolution. So that was surprising. The Blacks fought as Minutemen during the war. The Minutemen were an elite fighting group. The reason they were called Minutemen was because they could be ready in a minute. And some of the Blacks who fought included Cuff Whitmore, Pomp Fist, Titus Colburn, Caesar Weatherby, and so on. I've got them. I've got most of the names listed here, and of course, Crispus Attucks, an African. When I'm talking about Blacks back in the 1700s and the 1800s and before, I don't say African Americans, because you got to remember they weren't citizens during that time. So the first person to die in the American Revolution was an African named Crispus Attucks. That's the War of 1812. I did quite a few. Africans resisted enslavement at every opportunity. Blacks from Buffalo traveled to the West during the gold rush, struck it rich, and came back to Buffalo and bought up a lot of land. And one of those people who did it, his name was Will Talbot. And there's a book and here's the name of the book, if you might want to remember it. Blacks in the Gold Rush in California, written by Rudolph Lapp, L-A-P-P, published in 1977. So that's a book too. I have hundreds of books. Now, I also have written about Blacks on the international level. Alexander Pushkin was the greatest Russian poet that ever lived, an African. And this was published in the Buffalo News, February 5th, 2017. Pushkin was born on May 26, 1799 in Moscow to the granddaughter of an African slave owned by Peter the Great. Pushkin was proud of his African heritage. One of his unfinished historical novels was called Peter the Great's Negro, also known as The Blackamoor of Peter the Great. And there's a statue of him in Russia. I do have a film. I have a collection of over 200 films and DVDs that document a lot of these things that I write about. And I'm constantly reviewing those things. I'm going to move right along. Now, at the end of this presentation, there's going to be a collage of pictures. And I'm going to go through them very quickly. And that will have some present day African Americans, some past African Americans, just a whole collage of things. And I'm not ready to do it right now, but let me just go on. In terms, I'm very, very honored also to be part of a new book that's just been published. I'm one of over 100 women who are in this book. And the name of the book is Letters to Kamala Harris, our new vice president. And the book was written, compiled, put together by a very distinguished African-American historian, Dr. Peggy Brooks Bertram. The book, it's available on Amazon. I just ordered my copy. I haven't had a chance to see it. I call Dr. Peggy Bertram Doctor, because she has 2 PhDs. I'm struggling just trying to get through with one and to finish my dissertation. But Dr. Bertram has put this book together. And there are 20 women from Buffalo who are in the book. I'm one of the 20. And the rest of the 100 and some women are from all over the country and even from other countries. We'll move right along. During the past 11 years, and Chantel mentioned this, I have created a couple of awards to give to people who are doing good work in our community and our city. Now, someone may ask the question, well, Ms. Doyle, why do you create these awards? One day I was sitting in my chair and I was looking at my wall, and I have hundreds of awards. I have all kinds of plaques. I have all kinds of certificates. And I said to myself, I would like to create a couple of awards to honor people in our city, our community, who are doing some great things, and they don't really get recognition for the things that they're doing. So I came up with this award, and it's called Roses for Outstanding Women. And I started this award 11 years ago. So I did it at the first time, I would say the first 2 or 3 times I did it at the Frank Merriweather Library. The Merriweather Library is named after the Merriweather family that publishes the Criteria newspaper. And I would invite the women, send them a letter, and invite them to come. And each woman got a red rose. And I'm going to read this here because this is from the program booklet, why I chose this. Roses are known for their great beauty, and they have a special place in our lives. Like a rose, a woman is special at any age. Roses come in many colors, but the red rose stands out from all the others. All of the women honored are like these special flowers. They stand out in our community, and they touch so many lives in so many ways. This is a copy of the program booklet. Each woman got a copy of the booklet. And like I said, I've honored I would say probably over 500 women from all different areas of the community, from business, from law, from medicine, from education, from science, community service, the arts, the media, and so many other areas. Now, an interesting thing happened. The first few years, I had it at the Merriweather Library. Now, the Merriweather Library has a beautiful auditorium, but it only holds 150 people. So many people showed up. The women, they brought their families, they brought the friends, they brought their organizations, and we outgrew it. People were standing in the aisles, people were blocking the doorway. So I said, you know what? I got to move this. So after about 4 or 5 years, I contacted the Miss Mary Jean Jakubowski, who was the director of the library system, and I wanted to know if I could do this at the Downtown Central Library in downtown Buffalo, which holds over 300 people, and she said yes. So I've been doing that year after year after year, and people would just come from everywhere, and it would just be such a beautiful event. But then COVID hit. So after COVID hit, I had to, and I haven't really decided what I'm going to do this year for the 12th year, but someone mentioned to me, well, Miss Doyle, why don't you do it virtually? So I'm thinking about it. I always plan things out in my head first. If I can plan it in my head and I can visualize it, then I'll go from there. So I always did it in the month of March. And the reason I did it in the month of March is because March is Women's History Month. So I'm still thinking, I haven't really made a decision, but I don't know what's going to happen. Now, some of you might say, well, what about the men? Well, I had another thought. I created another award. And this award, it takes the name of my newspaper column. It's called the Ion History Award. And so I chose people in the community who are doing so outstanding things, men and women, people from business. Some of these people are Larry and Jackie Stitz, who own the Golden Cup Cafe on Jefferson, East Utica. Their coffee is so good, it's now in Wegmans. So I congratulate them. They service ECMC, as well, Mr. Doug Ruffin, he's a local filmmaker, Karima Amin, Sharon Holly, are storytellers, locally and nationally known, and they have a group called We All Storytellers. Sharon and Kenny Holly, owner of the only Black bookstore in the city of Buffalo, called Zawadi Books. I also honored the Kwanzaa Committee, both men and women, for their hard work of organizing the African American holiday of Kwanzaa every year. I honored Marcus Brown for his 30 years as president of the Juneteenth Festival. He just retired, and they have a new president now, and Jennifer Strickland is the new president. But we have one of the largest Juneteenth festivals in the country, and you know it went virtual last June, and Kwanzaa for the first time also went virtual in December. I honored Brenda Brown, who is a very talented singer. She sings with the New Beginnings Choral Ensemble. Robin Hilbert, an African dance instructor in Buffalo. The late William White Cooper, the most talented artist that we have had. Dr. Intari Galt and his wife, both playwrights and poets. So I wanted to do this to honor these people who are doing so much, and each one of them, in their own unique way, did something to honor African American history. That was important to me. That's why I named it the Ion History Award. So I gave each one, got a plaque, which I designed. And at the top of the plaque was the, okay, you're going to the videos? Okay, leave it right there for just a minute. A type of the plaque was the Sankofa symbol, was an West African symbol, which means to go back and on my billboard. I think it was on my billboard. I don't know, but anyway, it means to go back and fetch our history, our culture, our tradition, bring it to the present, and utilize those lessons for the future. What you're seeing on the screen, I have created a number of Black History billboards. Some of you might have seen them. And this billboard features Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who created the celebration of Black History in February. And there is the Sankofa symbol right next to my name. And you'll see that it's a symbol of two birds with their heads put together looking backwards. As I said, it comes from West Africa. And I want to thank Lamar Advertising. Lamar Advertising is the company that does my billboards. These billboards are very expensive. I use my own money to pay for them. I've been doing them for 7 years, but I thank Lamar because they work with me. They work with me to produce these billboards. Let's go to the next screen real quick. Chantel, are you, okay, here is Mary B. Talbot. She's on the Freedom Wall. She was a very prominent civil rights leader in Buffalo in the early 1900s, and a lot of famous people came to her home to organize the oh boy, my God, Niagara Movement, 1905, which was a forerunner of the NAACP. And she fought a lot against lynching in the country. She did a lot of work for civil rights in Buffalo, and also she led an anti-lynching campaign. Very distinguished woman. Next one. Okay, this is, I couldn't find a good picture. Ruby Bridges, this is a children's book. But you got to learn the story of Ruby Bridges. At the age of 6 years old, was the first Black student to integrate the schools in New Orleans. And she had to be escorted by federal marshals because when she went to school for the first day, her mother went with her. And she had to go up this, looked like a mountain of steps to get to the front door of the school. And the crowd was calling her the N-word and harassing her, and she just kept walking. And one woman had a coffin. She had a small coffin with a black doll inside of it. And she tried to put it in the face of Ruby, but Ruby just kept looking straight ahead. She just kept walking. She just kept walking. But let me tell you what happened. Because the white community did not want Black students at that school, they took all the children out of school. And for the first year, Ruby was taught by herself, the only student in the school, taught by a very kind white teacher. Every day she taught Ruby Bridges. And let me tell you something, she's still alive. She's in her 60s. She's been to Buffalo a few times. Next, let's go. I gotta hurry. Oh boy, it's 1:45. These are the students, this is James Meredith, who integrated, let's go back here, the Little Rock Nine. Now, I don't think all of them are here. This is the famous Thurgood Marshall, first Black U.S. Supreme Court Justice who worked with the Little Rock Nine. They integrated the Central High School in Little Rock. They had to be escorted by federal troops. They actually, not the National Guard, but federal troops had to escort them. They were harassed and called all kind of names and so on. And we'll go to the next one. Next screen, the Little Rock Nine. This is James Meredith. James Meredith integrated the University of Mississippi, which is a segregated university, in 1962. He also had to be escorted by federal troops. The governor of Mississippi, Ross Barnett, said that he would never allow any Black students to go to the University of Mississippi. But James Meredith just kept on going. He just kept on going, and he was shot, almost died, but he got up, cleaned himself up, and he graduated with a law degree and with honors. Next one. These children, one of the things that's missing from the story of the civil rights movement is the hundreds and hundreds of Black children who were arrested, who marched for civil rights, who tried to integrate schools. And these were just some of the children. And go to the next scene. These young ladies, the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, was bombed. And these children were killed in that bombing. And as soon as I find my notes here, I can give you their names. But one of them was Denise McNair. Got up Sunday morning, ready for church. Her white dress was neatly pressed. Her hair was combed and straightened. And that Sunday morning, a bomb shattered the peace of Birmingham, and they were killed. So look up the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. We'll go on to the next scene. And if I find my notes, I can give you the rest. Medgar Evers, a dedicated civil rights leader in Mississippi. He fought for the desegregation of the schools. He did a lot for voting rights for Blacks in Mississippi. Unfortunately, he was killed. He was shot dead in his driveway. He was shot in the back, and the gun was so powerful that it knocked him to the ground. And the person that shot him, Byron D. LeBeckwith, was not charged. He was acquitted by an all-white jury. It took years and years and years, with the help of his wife, Myrlie Evers, who fought for the vindication and fought to have this man put in prison. It took many, many years for that to happen. And Byron D. LeBeckwith was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and he did die in prison. I think it was in 2002. But his wife, Medgar Evers' wife, is still alive, and she still goes around and talks about civil rights. We'll go to the next one. There's almost, of course, we know this is a young picture of the Honorable John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, who passed away last year, and he did so much work in the Congress for civil rights. Just have a few more, and then I'm going to end. I think, let's see how many. This is one of my billboards I did, because there was so many people, young people getting killed and shot in the community. And I wanted them, I said, respect their memory. These people who worked hard for us, who did so much, stop the violence. So that's one of, I'm gonna go to the end, to the last one. Oh, here we are. Because Chantel asked me to talk about African Americans, past, present, and future. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the future. This is the future. Not only Amanda Gorman, who spoke so wonderfully at the inauguration, and her poem called The Hill We Climb, but she gives hope to all of us. And I had written something down here, and here we are. I want to just read this. This is my conclusion, and then I'll stop and see if anybody has any questions. The future. Amanda Gorman, and all the talented, creative, determined young people are the future. And let me say, both Black and white, they are the future. So we must encourage them, support them, let them know that they have the power to change things. They can lift us up through art and music, poetry, and whatever they choose to do. We must tell them to be excellent in all things, encourage them to remember the following words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now there's a tongue twister in this, so forgive me if I mess it up. If a person is called to be a street sweeper, he or she should sweep streets, even as Michelangelo painted, or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He or she should sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who did the job well. So that's my conclusion of my presentation. Like I said, I had more message than minutes. And I just wanted to leave you with that. There was something else I want to say. Oh, let me say this very quickly. 3 years ago, in 2017, I had a stroke. And I had the stroke, and I went to the Meriwether Library to get a book. I went up to the guard to say, to make some arrangements, and I couldn't speak. My mouth came from here to here. All my words were slurred. And the guy said, what's the matter, Mr. Doyle? What's the matter? I couldn't say anything. So somebody got me a chair, somebody bought me some water, and they called the ambulance. The ambulance got there in 5 minutes. A miracle happened. When the ambulance driver asked me, Miss Doyle, what hospital do you want to go to? And this is what I said. Get me to Gates. And you know why I said that? Because that was a commercial on television. And I remembered it. Get me. I could speak those words. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the best ambulance drivers and people, healthcare workers in the whole United States of America. They started working on me and got me to the emergency room. And then my family came and my words were still slurred. But that night, my speech came back. It came back. And I'm here today speaking to you. To God be the glory. Thank you, Chantel.
Thank you so much, Ms. Doyle. What an honor. And we are so grateful that you had a healthy recovery, and we are all very thankful for that. I see lots of hand clapping, and I just want to use these last few minutes. If anyone has any questions, I know there was a lot of new information myself. I was taking notes during your discussion for things that I want to go back and I want to be able to share with my son and share with my family, and more research that I want to do. I know I was extremely blown away, particularly by the comments with the names of the slave ships. That was something that was new to me as a pastor's daughter myself, right? And hearing slave ships named after Jesus and things of the Bible, that was really interesting to me. Doyle, I'll read some of these comments to you. We have a lot of positive feedback here. They said, Mrs. Doyle, you're amazing. I would love to spend a whole week listening to your stories. God bless. This was incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mother Doyle and organizers. What a wonderful program. Ms. Doyle, you are an inspiration to women. This was an amazing program. Thank you so much. Amazing stories and amazing work. Thank you all for that awesome feedback. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Doyle today about anything you heard, about her experience? We know she's a wealth of experience and knowledge. So we want to use these last few minutes to allow you to ask any questions. They're speechless. Thank you so much. Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Well, Ms. Doyle, while people are still commenting, I do have a question. What was it that kind of brought about, obviously you're a Black woman, but what sparked this passion for Black history?
What inspired my passion? That's your question. Mm-hmm. Well, when I went to East High School in Buffalo, I didn't really get any African-American history taught at that time. And when I went to Buffalo State College, I had a French professor, and I needed just a few credits to get my master's degree. I took an independent study on James Baldwin, the famous African-American writer. And I had to read his works, and each week I had to report to the professor on some of his work. And that sort of sparked my interest.
Awesome.
But you know, let me just say this real quick. Let me go back to high school.
And then when you go back, we do have a question in the chat from one of the
Oh, okay.
listeners.
I didn't have a lot of. I did have African American teachers at East High, but I had a white teacher named Marie Wendling, my English teacher, and I had a white teacher named Miss Foley. Miss Foley insisted that we learn American history. I appreciate that because I tell people all the time, in order for you to understand African American history, you have to study American history to really know how it all plays out. And Marie Wendling, my English teacher, forced us to get in front of the class and speak. And we had to learn these long poems. So I think that's why I'm a speaker today. Thanks to Miss Wendling. Well, now what's the so that sparked me the James Baldwin study.
And I'm a James Baldwin fan myself. Okay, Mother Doyle, Rebecca wants to know if you could recommend one book or source to continue learning about history, what would you recommend?
Oh, there's so many. If you want to get into African history, read a book called Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization.
Nile
Valley Contributions to Civilization by, oh boy, Anthony T. Browder, Browder. Now that's African history. If you want to really get a good expanse of American, African American history, read Before the Mayflower by Lerone, I believe it's Lerone Bennett Jr. He has passed away. I think he's the one, but he really gives you good, and anything by John Hope Franklin, anything by him.
Can you say that name again?
He's the late John Hope Franklin.
Okay.
Yeah, he did a lot of work on Africa. He wrote so many books, I can't think of any one title. Those are, and some work by Dr. Malife Asante, Asante. You know, I mean, there's so many of them. Hundreds of them.
Wonderful.
And I think I have them all in my house.
Thank you so much, Ms. Doyle. If people want to find out where you're speaking next or check out some of your books, where can people hear more about you?
Yes, because I've written 12 books myself. They can go to my website, www.evamdoyle.com. That will give a list of my books and a list of my articles, some of the articles, because I've written more than 4,000. And make sure you read the Ion History column in the Buffalo News, because each week there's going to be some information that I'm sure people don't know. Let me leave this last thing. And by the way, in each one of those articles, I list books. I wrote an article about the Black family on the ill-fated ship, the Titanic.
Oh.
That was the most popular. I got folks just calling everywhere. Where did you get that information? There's a book about them. They were, and then let me tell you something. They were a well-to-do family. But ask yourself a question. In all the movies about the Titanic, they never showed this Black family.
That is awesome. I'm definitely going to check that one out. My son has been really fascinated with history.
You can Google that one.
Yeah. We're going to check that one out. We've been checking out things about the Titanic lately, very recently. So I look forward to sharing that with him.
And
I'm looking at the time. We are out of time. I'm seeing so many awesome comments. Thank you all so much for spending your lunchtime with us. Dr. Doyle, Mother Doyle, you are such a blessing to the community. We thank you for sharing your time with our Child and Family Service audience. We are grateful. You've given us so much information today. And I'm sure that we will have lots to go back and reflect on with our families and with our colleagues. So thank you so much.
Thank you
God
again.
Bless you. Thank you all for joining us. Next week on Wednesday, we will have Lindsay Taylor, who is the curator and founder of Both Food Music and Arts Festival. It's an all-inclusive, multi-genre music and arts festival that promotes local artists of all genres and backgrounds. We're really excited. We're going to learn more about that event, learn more about what he's doing and the folks that are going to be promoted this year for the 2021 season. So thank you all so much. Black History Month. Remember, Black history is everybody's history. So make sure you all share with your families and continue to learn. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.